The public debates around state capture within the tripartite alliance of the ANC, SACP and COSATU, including the decline of support for the ANC as we saw in the recent local government elections, have seriously divided the factions within the party. Some established members of the ANC have been calling for President Jacob Zuma to resign, whilst others are urging him to stay on. And the impact of this is that the government appears to be in disarray, and obviously the country itself is negatively affected. The Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, went as far as saying that the government seems to be at war with itself, a perception that was contradicted by President Jacob Zuma when he appeared before Parliament recently. In the meantime, former President Kgalema Motlanthe says, given the country's problems, it appears the nation is on autopilot. One vocal critic of the latest developments is the former Treasurer General of the ANC, Dr. Mathews Phosa, who's with us in the studio. Pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Thank you, Tim, for inviting me.
The President, when he appeared before Parliament, let me start with that, he complained and said Parliament must make up its mind whether they want to invite him to Parliament or not. And he says he's being insulted, and EFF and COPE walked out of the Q&A session with him. Says he's been called all sorts of names and so on. Do you think that his complaint is justified?
The President's complaint is totally unjustified. It's part of the package. You don't get elected into public office to be praised only. You will also be criticized. People will throw tomatoes and rotten eggs in your face. That's part of political culture throughout the world. And it seems like he's feeling the heat. And if he's feeling the heat, he must jump out of the kitchen.
Now, as we speak in Gauteng specifically, Joburg, Tshwane, for instance, and the ANC here, they've felt the heat from the electorate. They have been running the metros, important parts of the country, contributing substantially to the country's GDP. The people who were in charge are now out of office, and it appears the reason, the major reason, was not necessarily that of performance, even though to some extent you could say performance was the issue, but was more to do with how citizens who reside in Gauteng felt about national government and President Zuma specifically. And that is why some of them have been suggesting that people must speak up and then President must do the right thing, and they're without jobs as we speak. What's your view of what happened to the ANC in Gauteng?
I've got a view, and it's not only limited to ANC in Gauteng, because these things happen across the country.
Yes.
We should celebrate the past elections because they reaffirmed our multi-party democracy, because that is a positive. It's a principle in our constitution that we now live to experience. And all the parties in this country must accept that you only rule at the will and wishes of the people. And therefore, if you don't perform in terms of the expectations, the people will always punish you. And what happened in those elections is that the weaknesses of the ANC were shown. The level of trust which the people have in the ANC has tanked very badly. And it's continued to tank every day, because even since those elections, there's been one scandal after another. It's not coming to an end. It's like a rainfall of hail of scandals. It's not coming to an end. So what the ANC should do, and what we should do in the ANC, is to learn the lessons. That you cannot say, "Asina valo," when people say you're corrupt. You cannot say, "Asina valo," when people say your president is corrupt. Because the Constitutional Court pronounces on him, you say no to the Constitutional Court, basically, you can go your way, we'll go our way. There will be no punishment for this man for what you say is a violation of the Constitution. Whether we like it or not, and it's not helpful for the ANC to go into a denial mode, which is very dominant, very serious denial mode. The people will always raise issues with us as frankly as possible. Now, the voices that are saying the president must step down have now increased since the elections. Not only are they asking for the president to step down, they say the NEC must get out. They must be collectively liable for this. First they say they are, and then what do they do to themselves? They continue the old way. They go around saying they're listening to the people. There's nothing the people are going to say to them which they have not said before the elections. Nothing. So the ANC's level of trust is collapsing, it's tanking, and my fear is in 2019, And there are many indications, scientific studies. The ANC will be likely to get 48% nationally.
You're suggesting, I mean, 48% already implies that it might get out of government completely now. I mean, at least at national level, because 48% is not a majority vote.
Tim, let me tell you, and I'm not going to mince my words, the risk of the ANC getting less than 50% in 2019 is real and more than real.
Now, one of the established members of the ANC and has occupied different senior positions within government is Sipho Pichana, who at the funeral of the late Reverend Arnold Stoffile put it blatantly in front of the thousands of people who were there and some senior ANC members and said he wished the president was there because he would have asked him to step down. And that has started something else because now, this week already, I spoke with Mzwanele Manyi, for instance, who says from where he's sitting, that is an act of treason, that Sipho Pichana is calling for a coup and therefore must be charged. That's what he says. On the other hand, the Black Business Council last week when it met with the president said, we're being asked to join groups of people who are calling for you to step down. We urge you, Mr. President, to stay on. What's going on? What do you think?
Let's take it step by step. But Sipho Pichana made a very important statement in that funeral. For me, it's a watermark political intervention by him. And it must be embraced unemotionally, and it must be accepted. He made valid criticism against his own party. And it's not a light matter for him to speak like that. And I speak like that, and I think we all are beginning to speak like that at different levels in the movement. And Jimmy Manyi has been migrating from one organization to the other. And we all know those organizations. And I don't want to be personal with him, but he has got very little understanding of the law. Sipho Pichana did not commit any treason. He exercised his democratic right to speak out on issues of corruption and issues which are giving the country a bad image. And the president is a leader of this country and also of his party, and he must take responsibility. You can't rub it off on anyone else. We all, when we make mistakes, take responsibility and respect the voices of the people. The president is not an exception. He's just one of the citizens. So to come and say when Sipho Pichana has expressed such brilliant views, because we don't agree with it, therefore it's treason, is to fail to apply one's mind properly. And with respect to Jimmy Manyi, I would like him to go and think again. I'm a lawyer. There's no treason there. I see only democracy.
Now, in the case of the position of Black Business Council, what's your take on their position?
You see, I know those colleagues of mine were all in business together. And equally, they're entitled to express their views, Tim. But I think their view is not correct. Because they, in the face of the Constitutional Court decisions, they express themselves in that manner. So to them, does it matter what happens to the Constitution of this country? Or is it enough that they get their way with the president? You know, I'll tell you something with your viewers today. One person said to me over the weekend, you know, Zuma is very good to us. I said, why, comrade? He said, because he makes us make money. So those are the type of people we're talking about. As long as they get whatever the concern they get from him, he's a good president, he must stay on. But what is the national interest?
Well,
the national interest is bigger than them.
Yeah, here's another thing that I find strange, and a lot of people would find it strange. Start with the deputy president. He says, you know, what is happening to Pravin Gordhan with the Hawks investigating him, the different kinds of stories around that are unseemly. They harm the country's image, which you referred to, and the government seems to be at war with itself. And then the president comes to his Q&A session in Parliament and says, actually, for all intents and purposes, there's no such thing. He disagrees with that view.
The president is entitled to disagree with any view he wants. He even has a right to talk nonsense. Let me put it that way. He's in denial. If ministers in one cabinet attack each other on public platform, some of them masquerade in military uniforms, you know, as we saw on national television. One cabinet, same cabinet, same party.
Yes.
Is the president not aware of that? That's chaos. That's not order in a party or a government. So Comrade Cyril, the Deputy President of this country, is quite right to call the forces to order, to say, guys, let's stop fighting amongst ourselves. And in addition, let us stop fighting President Gordon. He's doing a great job for the people. There's no evidence that he's not. Why did they bring him back if he was not? He did an excellent job at SARS, collected the biggest amount of money for this country. He is facing the task of doing his medium-term budget. We're now facing downgrades. And this morning only, a number of our parastatals have been shown the finger that they are at risk. Now he's fighting that to try and get us in a stronger position. So when we raise money overseas, it's not very expensive to us. Because if it's going to be expensive to us, like it will be if you are downgraded, the effect will come to you and me, Mr. and Mrs. taxpayers.
Yes.
And we don't want that.
Well,
why must we carry the sins of wrong politicians?
Dr. Phosa, I want you to simplify this for me, right? Because we talk downgrades and rating agencies and so forth. For us as ordinary citizens and taxpayers, what is the likeliest impact on us in the event we are given a downgrade? Because, you know, once we can understand that, then we'll appreciate why all the complications, the problems at the top need to be resolved as speedily as possible.
Well, the immediate impact would be that all our SOEs, right, who are being downgraded, are going to find it very expensive to raise money, to inject in their operations. And we've got many things to do to meet the expectations of our people. And as a government, we should easily access capital from all over the world. It's going to be very difficult and very expensive. And I'm saying it will impact on you, Mr. Taxpayer and Mrs. Taxpayer. And we don't want to carry the burden of wrong political decisions. That's why we're against wrong political decisions, wrong political behavior. We say, let's avoid the downgrade. And the best way of doing so is not to attack President Gordon and the Treasury. It's not to attack the Reserve Bank, it's to protect them.
But what did you think when you heard that the Minister of Mineral Resources, Mathews Phosa, for instance, had issued a statement outside of the cabinet statement saying that there's going to be a judicial commission of inquiry into the banking system and that this is going ahead and there were contradictions, this and that. And then 24 hours later, the presidency said it was his own personal view. It was not even the view of the interministerial team that he's part of, not even of cabinet. What did you make of that statement? And a few days later in Parliament, he defended the same position.
Yeah, but it means Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, is right. Is the cabinet talking against itself in conflicting ways? I thought Museveni was out of order, and I thought if the cabinet had taken such a decision, it would be out of order, and I was relieved to know that there was no such cabinet decision. And for Museveni to continue in the face of his president saying, hey, there's no such a decision, to insist on his position is to be very politically delinquent.
Well, he's there. He's still a minister. What do you think should happen to him?
Well, exactly what you're talking about. There must be consequences for bad behavior. And as long as there are no consequences for bad behavior, especially at the highest level, the people lose confidence in us. They say we're just talking and say we don't like it, but we do nothing to stop it.
Now, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, who heads the ANC's Economic Planning Committee, himself earlier this week came out to say he supports President Gordon and called again for, let's call it a ceasefire, that he must be left alone to do his work. And then he was reprimanded by Mr. Zizi Koda, who speaks on behalf of the ANC. You have spoken out yourself very vocally and publicly about where you stand on these issues. And the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, suggests that it's maybe you're hankering after a position. You still want a top position within the ANC as former Treasurer General, that maybe you miss your time as one of the top 6 of the organization. We are confused.
Tim, the Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Gwede, did not deal with any of the issues I raised. On the contrary, he attacked the messenger, not the message. He didn't deal with the issues I raised about the chaos we're talking about in the party. He went personal. And I didn't respond to him because I thought he was talking a lot of nonsense. You don't respond to nonsense. You just ignore it. Godongwana is within his right to say, please let's stop attacking Bravin or even attacking one another. I thought he made the same statement with everybody in the ANC would wish to make.
Yeah.
Zizi is very quick to make statements sometimes without proper reflection. And I will encourage him not to be played by factions in the party.
How is the ANC going to help itself now, especially when you talk about the different factions, right? Because in Parliament, in particular, the ANC seems incapable of dealing with what it must deal with. Then it's left to the opposition parties to say the very things that you are saying now that are being said by other people. And then the members of Parliament who represent the ANC seem to be in a quandary, in a confused state of mind of not knowing exactly what to say, what to defend, and what not to defend.
I think my party, the ANC, must stop defending wrong things. It's very simple. Because if you defend wrong things, you are in the opposition. They will always know that you are lying, you're defending the indefensible. The same thing with the masses out there watching that television. If you lie, and when you lie, the people know. There are no fools in this country. So you can't begin to categorize into fools and clever blacks. There are no fools. The nation is clever, and you must give the nation that particular space of their own wisdom and judgment. We need leadership in our organization. A leadership which stops looking back and driving with a rear view mirror and to show us the way to the future. Clearly, what is the way forward going to the future? The ANC needs to call itself to order and strengthen its structures again and choose a new leadership, totally new leadership in my view. And we should not be ashamed to start afresh, like Zola Skoyel said. There's honor in saying, we messed up, let's clean up.
Well, the way things are going, it appears the ANC is going to wait for its National Elective Conference next year, 2017, December. In the meantime, the issues are there on the table, meaning the hope is that somehow whatever the problems that exist will resolve themselves.
They won't.
Most of them have been blamed on President Jacob Zuma. What is your view of the president if you were to give him advice today and say, this is the best way to help the country find its way, as well as a member of the ANC yourself, for the organization to heal itself and get itself together? Do you blame him for all of this?
I blame the whole leadership, Tim. If you've got a sore with pus in it, it doesn't matter how many bandages you put on that sore with pus. Pus will remain in the wound. You need to remove the pus out of the wound and clean the wound, then the wound will heal. We must take responsibility. We put the president there. We need to say to him, come President or Mr. President, the noise is too much. You don't have to be found legally guilty. It's enough to be morally guilty. There's a moment when you must know when to go. And we think it's now that you should go. And he must go and stay in Kandla, and no one will worry him there. And that will create a new chemistry at the top in the NEC and better space for different type of debate. And that cleansing process must start. I've heard people talk about consultative conference, special conference. Tim, I don't know what they're going to solve. You need to go back to the branches of the ANC. A lot of branches have got members who are not real members. They're members of members. So they're bogus branches. The ANC is based on the principle of volunteerism. You volunteer to join the ANC. You don't get me having money and buying membership for you. So you need to clean up that mess there. Then you will have cleaned up the PC and the NEC. Building up to maybe that particular conference in 2017. Why the rush to a conference? What do you need to resolve? Nothing. We're just going to swear at each other there.
Brief response from you. The noise is there, your chaos, the reports, everything you've mentioned. Is the president aware of this? And why is he not responding to the same noise that you've spoken about?
Tim, I've told you, he's in denial. And it's unfortunate. Because the whole organization is also in denial. To have a slogan that says, Asina Valo, is to insult the intelligence of the people when they say you're corrupt.
Dr. Mathews Phosa, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, there you are, speaking his mind frankly, freely, And expressing the strong views, Dr. Mathews Phosa, the former Treasurer General of the ANC, is saying that the nation is in trouble. The time has come for deep reflection within the ANC with specific action that must be taken. One of them being that the leadership of the ANC needs to step down soonest and that new leadership be elected. What is your view? We would like to hear from you. And of course, share your thoughts on Twitter @Tim Modise.